in English, forum name Hyperbytes, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at using the security provider with the in clause, which allows us to have multiple roles permitted to access an individual page. We're looking how we can apply that at layout level, so we can restrict access to a particular group of pages based on that layout. And then we'll also be looking at how we can implement some sort of security at component level, so only certain components within the page are displayed dependent on the roles that the current person who is logged in has. So excuse me, let's make a start. I'm just going to say this is version 2 of the tutorial. Apologies for version 1, got that horribly wrong, don't know what came over me. But in the same way, I'll be using the same logins, etc. If you did watch that. And the little history behind it is Isabel, who is on our forum under the name of Buggy, sort of dropped a big hint that she could do with a tutorial on this. She also mentioned that she has 2 children, Kumi and Aston, who do a pretty good impersonation of me, apparently, having heard her mum listen to so many videos. So this video is dedicated to Kumi and Aston, and I hope that it is useful to everybody who views it. Right, so what have I got now? At the moment, I simply have a straightforward index page with a unsecured main layout, and I'm really just using this as a dashboard. From here I can link to a secure page, I can log in as 4 different people, or I can log out. And the secure page at the moment is nothing more than a plain layout with nothing at all added, and a simple page which has 4 rows in, and each row has simply a heading in it. And at the moment everything should be displayable, so if we go into permissions, click secure page, we'll see that we have that page was reproduced exactly. If I look at the current setup with permissions, remember we set up permissions within global security providers, and this particular permission, or this security provider, is obviously database based, and within that we have 4 different types of user. We have a manager, role is M, a photographer, role is P, an artist, role is A, and a sculptor, role is S. You notice they are equals, and if we look now at our database tables, the important ones have a user table, and we have those 4 users in, and they all have a single role: manager, sculptor, photographer, artist. If you like the 2 table approach to roles, which I often teach, you can also use that. It really doesn't matter which you use for the purpose of this tutorial. If I have a look at that, you can see that users 1, 2 and 3, 4 have M, S, P and A. So that's exactly the same roles as we actually had directly into the users table. So the consequence with that, within the user permissions, it doesn't matter whether you're using the roles table here, or we could be using the users table. In this case I'm using roles because that's the way that it's been set up. So how would we apply security to this secure page? Well, the answer is we simply apply a security provider. So I've got a permissions folder here. I'm going to add an API action, and I'm just going to call this action secure it. Within here I'm going to go into our security provider, I'm going to add a security restrict, and we're going to use the provider tutorials. Permissions I'm going to leave blank for the moment, so that means that any person at all can access that page provided they are logged in. Doesn't matter which role it is, and we're just, if they're not logged in, I'm going to take them back to the home page, which is where I have the switchboard located. So having applied that, now we can now go into our secure layout page, click on app, and then in here all we're going to do is select that secure it, or secute it as I've said, API action. That means that when that layout page runs, that API action will run. It will check that security restrict, and if the individual isn't logged in, then we will be returned back to the switchboard. So if I go to switchboard, I'm going to first of all log out, and then if I click secure page, you'll see it appears nothing happens. In actual fact, what's happening is it's returning directly back to the dashboard page without anything at all appearing. If I log in as anybody, let's say I log in as me as a manager, now click that secure page, you can see now we can access that. And it doesn't matter who we're logged in as, or we log in as Kumi as an artist, check that secure page, we can see that we can access that page. We can further refine that level of security. If I go back into that security and say, well, only a artist can access that page. So I'll save that. I'm going to go back now into this. So I'm going to try and access that as a photographer, and you'll see that it won't let us to go in. But if we go in as an artist, you can see that, because that security restrict says if you're not an artist, you cannot access this page at all. One little issue though, we got a manager permission in there. What about this poor little manager who, can't actually go into the sub pages that the sculptor, artist and photographer can access? Seems to defeat the object of having a manager really, and we can actually get around that very, very easily by modifying the security provider. And this is where we're going to be using the in operator. So at the moment we've got role equals P, but we can actually say if the role is in, and then we can add a comma separated list of the roles that can access that particular permission. So at the moment we're allowing anything that has the, shall we say them, sub permissions, means that if a manager can access the management pages and the photographer pages and the artist pages and the sculptor pages. Save that. So now if we go into our page, first of all I log out just to show that's still working correctly. You can see we can't go into the secure page because, quite frankly, don't have the permission to do it. At the moment it's secured as an artist page, so if we log in as a sculptor we can't log in. But if we log in as a manager, because we've said you can either be an artist or a manager, then you'll see that the manager can log in as can the artist. So that's allowed us to specify that in our security provider we can use that in clause to say that the permission is granted for people in two different roles. So that's the first part of the tutorial. Really, really simple that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take out that permission there and just leave it as person must be logged in. I'll just show you that now works. So if we log in as Lizabelle as a photographer, check that secure page, we can see now we can go into that secure page. What we want to do now is to be able to access or to restrict different components to different roles. So if I go back into Wappler now and I go into the My Secure page, this page we can see we have our three paragraphs. And what I want to do now is to be able to switch those on and off depending on the role that the individual has. So we're going to do two things. We're going to make a server action that will return the roles, and then we've got to create the conditions on which each of those paragraphs will be shown. So I'm going to go into permissions, I'm going to add an API action, and I'm going to call this my roles. In that, what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to return who is the current logged in person, because obviously you can't get to this secure page if you're not logged in. So we'll do that via a security identity. And then we're going to then make a database query to find out what role they're in. We use a single query because we should only be returning one role here. Now, depending on whether you're using the one table or the two table approach, if it's a single table approach, you're simply going to go into the users and you're going to ask for the role, and you're going to make that condition where the user ID is equal to the security identity. In my case, I've actually used a two table approach, so I'm going to have to create a join here. Actually, we don't. I'm going to say I'm going to just remove that. We can do it directly out of the roles table, of course. So I'm going to ask for the role, and the condition will be that the user ID is equal to the security identity. So that's what that's going to do, is it's going to do the usual. It's going to identify the user. We're going to return the user ID. We're going to then retrieve the role of that individual person and return that from our server action. Having done that, we need to then just add that to the secure login page. Let's remove that, sorry. So we're going to server connect, select action, and we can select that my roles action. So that means any page that is linked to that secure layout will then have the role of that individual returned to the page. So we can use that to be able to conditionally switch on these different areas here. We're going to have a look at how to do this simply by using a conditional region. Remembering in this particular case that my roles query is a single query, so we're only going to get a single role returned. There is a different approach you would have to use if there was a multi-role scenario, which I have demonstrated in the past, but we'll just stick with a single role for the minute, and then I'll just tag on a second video in this series to show you how to deal with multiple roles if somebody has been given more than one role simultaneously. So this is really easy. We're going into the My Secure page. We want to make sure that only a sculptor or a manager can see that particular screen entry. So we're just going to make it a conditional region. Why conditional region rather than hide show? Well, conditional regions are not rendered in the DOM, so they're more secure and more effective than simply hide show, which really just applies the dnon CSS style. So I prefer conditional regions for that reason, and our condition is going to be very simply that the role, I'm just going to type this in manually, it's easier, is equal to M, single quote that, or copy that and paste S. So all we've said is that particular row will only show if the person has a role of either a manager or a sculptor. And we can, of course, apply that to any of our So we could make this the same condition but with A, artist, this with P, photographer. I'm just going to make sure, because I always double check these conditions, because just occasionally the builder gets it wrong, but that looks pretty good to me. So let's save that. Let's fire up our page. Right, so let's start the basics. Log out the current user should not be able to access that secure page at all. I'm now going to log in as a photographer. We should see that page but not see the sculptor entry. If we log in as a sculptor, we will see that sculptor entry, and if we log in as a manager, we will see that sculptor entry. So we can see that clause is working exactly right. I'm just going to quickly pop into here. I'm just going to copy that condition, or that whole line of code really. Copy. I'm going to now apply that to there. Doesn't like something there. Right, let's just make that a conditional and make that a conditional, and then we can just paste in this part of the code. Yeah, it's happy with that. But in this case, we're going to be talking about that one is a artist page, so we'll change that to A. Whoops. And that one is the photographer's page, so we're going to change that to P. So each of those three rows now, one will only be visible if you're either a manager or a sculptor, one if you're a manager and an artist, and the other a manager or a photographer. So I'll save that. Let's go into our screen again. Let's first of all log out. Obviously that doesn't work. As a manager, I should be able to see all three. As a photographer, Isabel should only see photographer. If Gumi, then we're going to be looking only at the artist. And if you're at Aston, you will only see the sculptor. So there we are. That's how we're able to apply that role-based security down to a component level. So that's the basics of it all. I'm just going to do a little extra module next, just to cover if that query that we put within the here, this one returned a multiple record rather than a single record, because you have to use a slightly different clause. So if you need to know about that, join me in the next video. If not, thanks for joining me, and I hope that's clarified how to do this properly rather than that rather bad version 1 that I can only apologize for. So thanks for joining me, and hope to see you next time.